Hi, Jeff. Welcome back to the Art of Living Well podcast. We are so excited to have you here today. So, Jeff is actually my uncle. So it's extra fun to have him on the podcast. And he was also on an earlier episode of ours, episode 26, where we talked about his company, OneDrop, and diabetes and how you can use mobile computing devices and data science to live your best life. And Jeff is still very much in the diabetes space, and he has type 1 diabetes himself. And today we're having a more personal conversation with him about his experience with Mounjaro, which is a GLP-1 class drug, which lately has been, well, it's been approved for weight loss, but Jeff went on the drug because of his diabetes. And Jeff, we will let you take it from there.
Great. It's a pleasure to be with you guys again. Thank you so much for having me. And it's my pleasure to share some of my experience. It's worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
It's worthwhile. And before we dive into this topic, we have one question to ask you. And what is your one non-negotiable to start each day?
One non-negotiable. Coffee is a non-negotiable to start each day. I need to put a lot of coffee down my gullet to get things going. So coffee is my non-negotiable.
Nice.
Okay, great.
Yeah, not start the day without coffee. It is non-negotiable.
We actually don't get that answer very often. So, and you'd think we would, but we don't.
Right.
That is crucial.
In any case, so we know that some of our listeners are somewhat familiar with the GLP-1 class drugs, and we did drop a part 1 on this topic recently, but we want to know if you could provide us with some high-level information or overview on how these drugs work and specifically how they can impact a person.
Great. Well, I'm going to speak from both personal experience and then just from my experience as a person in the diabetes industry, because these originally were formulated as diabetes drugs, and I'll explain why. And then also not a doctor, and I'm not able or qualified to provide any medical advice, so I'm just not doing that. The original sort of first versions of these drugs were what they call single agonist, and they were designed for people with diabetes as glucose lowering agents. The first sort of company that came out with, well, Lilly and Novo Nordisk are the two main manufacturers of the drugs that are out in the market today. And the earlier versions were, quite effective. And so these companies continued to invest in developing them even further. And then the next generations of them became even more effective. And then lastly, sort of the current versions of these drugs that are out there, the GLP-1 class of drugs, are extremely effective. And I have a feeling that they're going to only get even more and more effective at helping people with chronic conditions. And I'll caveat that and explain why. Liraglutide, which was sort of one of the first versions of Novo Nordisk's GLP-1 class of drugs under the brand name Victoza, was sort of found to be a very strong single agonist GLP-1 peptide to lower glucose for people. And if you have lower glucose, you need less insulin, right? As a person with diabetes. So I take insulin every day. I need to take insulin every day to live. And if I can lower the amount of glucose in my bloodstream, then I need to take less insulin. And it's an interesting sort of conundrum from a company that manufactures insulin, right? Novo Nordisk and Lilly are the largest insulin manufacturers in the world. And Sanofi is another one. But from these companies that have been making insulin for the last however many years, it's an interesting effort to come out with a drug that makes you need less insulin. And that largely has to do with the economics of the insulin business. The economics of the insulin business have been gutted. So it's very difficult for these manufacturers to produce the volume of insulins that people need to keep producing it and then selling it through the healthcare systems, because the price of insulin has commoditized. The patents for most of the advanced insulins have expired, and now you can make generic insulin. And so Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, who had huge profit streams coming from insulins, had to think about, like, well, what's going to be next when we can't make even better insulins, or our patent protection comes off of these insulins. And so they started to produce compounds that what I call are upstream drugs. So how can I affect the body before it needs insulin? And so they started to work on these GLP-1 class of drugs. The first one that came out was liraglutide, and liraglutide under the brand name Victoza was launched, I'm going to call it a decade ago or so. And it didn't have a lot of uptake. There weren't many people that were really interested in liraglutide. It acts as a gastric emptying constrictor. So your stomach feels fuller because it slows the gastric emptying. And because you're feeling fuller, and because your bloodstream isn't receiving the full amount of food that was in your stomach, your blood sugar goes down because it's not absorbing all the carbohydrates that are in your stomach as fast as it normally would have. And it does a bunch of other things, but you feel fuller. And the side effect of that is that you lose a little bit of weight because you're feeling fuller most of the time and you're eating less food. And so your blood sugar goes down, you're feeling fuller, you're eating less food, and you're losing a little bit of weight. And liraglutide was really sort of, I think, an interesting first product in the market. And then Novo Nordisk came out with the second version of that, which is semaglutide. And semaglutide is largely the product that everybody knows about today as Ozempic. Ozempic, and then its stronger cousin, Wegovy. And I'm sorry, and let me go back to liraglutide. Victoza had its stronger cousin, Saxenda. So the two brand names for liraglutide were Victoza for people with diabetes, and then Saxenda, which was approved for people with weight loss. Some of the problems of liraglutide and the Saxenda and Victoza products were that when they felt full like that, it created sort of gastric problems for some folks, where you maybe were taking too much of it and you felt really full, or you got constipated, or these sort of gastric side effects. And so as they moved into the next version, semaglutide, and the brand name Wegovy and Ozempic, some of those side effects were decreased a little bit. The effectiveness of those products, of semaglutide as a dual agonist. So liraglutide was a single agonist. Semaglutide was a dual agonist, and semaglutide sort of took off as an amazing product for people with diabetes. And then as a side effect, sort of people in Hollywood started to use it, and people, the Kardashians or whoever, pick your favorite sort of large influencer in the marketplace, started to use this product and lose weight, and it sort of took off as a weight loss thing off-label. Then as that market has exploded, Lilly came into the market with a product called Mounjaro, which is a triple agonist. It does three different things. So all has the same effect in the same ways. And people started to see even more dramatic weight loss on Mounjaro, as well as the blood glucose lowering effect. Now, all that is interesting and good, and people with diabetes can certainly benefit from glucose lowering agents. They also can benefit from having lost weight because they're eating less, and therefore they're consuming less carbohydrates. Just because they're eating less of everything, they're consuming less carbohydrates, therefore they need less insulin. And so all that's really good for people with diabetes. Beyond that, however, what's so exciting about this class of drugs is that it's proven to have an effect on weight. Now, as you both know, excess weight is one of the largest causes of metabolic conditions in America today. Excess weight. There's 40% of people are obese. You have too much, and let's even go further upstream. You have too much processed food coming into the industrial food supply at extremely low cost, subsidized by U.S. corn subsidies, right? U.S. subsidizes the production of corn. We have cheap corn calories going into meat feed for chicken and beef, and cheap excess corn calories going into sugar with high fructose corn syrup. And therefore, you have all of these processed foods getting extremely low subsidized sort of cost, and thus making this industrial food extremely cheap for everybody in the United States. And people are consuming all of this food, and then they're gaining weight. And then you're seeing the result of all of that weight gain in metabolic conditions in the US, like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and kidney disease. And those metabolic conditions are costing the United States over $1 trillion a year in healthcare spend alone. Okay? So when you see the industrial food supply sort of poisoning us with this processed food that tastes great and is so cheap that everybody can afford it, that there's a dollar menu with this massive amounts of cheap processed food on it, and and it tastes so good, right? It's engineered to basically taste great and have people want to be addicted to it and consume it. Like, of course, you're going to get the downstream effects of metabolic conditions like diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, and obesity, right? So food. How do we as a society stem this metabolic condition pandemic that's happening to us, right? How are we going to stop it? Of course, you want people to eat better food. Marnie, I see on Marnie's Instagram, like all the amazing meals she cooks and all of this fabulous. It's fabulous, right? Everybody should eat like Marnie eats. But when you can't when you're in a food desert, or you can't afford it, or you can't find access to these foods, or you just don't like it because it doesn't taste as good as the dollar menu meal, right? And I like my salty, fatty, sugary yumminess that costs $1. Like, what do people do? And how are we going to stem the $1 trillion a year in U.S. healthcare spend that is impacting all of us? We all pay more taxes because of it. We all pay higher healthcare costs because of it. We all pay for this problem with industrial food supply poisoning us and having everybody have metabolic conditions like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and kidney disease. How are we going to stem them? And so when I look at the benefits of GLP-1s, I'm not just looking at how people with diabetes can lower their blood sugars. I'm looking at how the impact on the demand for these foods goes away. If everybody was on a GLP-1, we all would be eating less of this poisonous food. We all would be improving our blood sugars. We all would be having less musculoskeletal problems because we're not carrying around 50 extra pounds of weight that we schlep each day through our days. We would not be having the level of heart disease or kidney disease or obesity that we would see in society. And our healthcare costs would go down. Our productivity in the United States would go up. You would have less people sick out of work. You'd have less people absent from work. You'd have more people working harder because they're stronger, because they can deal with their bodies now. And all of that to me sounds like such a huge, huge win for society. And so when I look at these advanced GLP-1s, I don't just see like, oh, I want to lose a few pounds and look cute, on my trip to Costa Rica, or I want to feel better in my clothes, which is an awesome benefit of GLP-1s. But I see as a society the impact that affecting these metabolic conditions can have on U.S. productivity, on taxes, on the deficit that we have, on healthcare spend, and on people feeling better about going out and doing what they need to do. And I only see this class of drugs getting better and better and better at impacting all of those different things. So that's why I'm super excited about GLP-1s.
Well, Jeff, we can just hear the passion you have for this subject come through loud and clear. For those of you not on YouTube, head over there. But you bring up so many really good points and articles that I've read, because this has a ripple effect on many other industries, healthcare, surgeries that may go away, other drugs and statins that people may no longer need after they've lost weight and improve their metabolic health, and the food industry, the processed packaged food industry, which, that I've already read articles saying, well, we're going to just reduce our package size because we know people are eating less of our Chips Ahoy and crackers and snacks and all the crap. But I really look at this as being like a multifaceted answer, because if people just start eating less of the crap food, yeah, they're going to lose weight and they may not need as much insulin and other drugs, but how are they, to your point about looking at Marnie's food and just eating a more whole foods diet, right? How can we also tackle this from weight loss, metabolic health? Yes, but then also helping people eat more real food. And sometimes maybe they just need a little bit of like a catalyst, and maybe being on one of these GLP-1 drugs helps them get over that hurdle. But then it's really tying back to, if we could all, and there were no food deserts, we could all eat more whole foods, then would we even need this to begin with, right? But it's like, I get that you need, a lot of people need that boost, and I'm talking not so much those that are dependent on insulin, but just other people like you mentioned.
Yeah. I've been in the sort of behavior change business for a little over a decade now, trying to help people with diabetes change the way they behave in terms of being able to manage a deadly condition like diabetes. And it's really difficult. It's extremely difficult to get people to change their behaviors. And you've got to want to do it, right? And it's like, even if you want to do it, there's a whole bunch of things that are working against you. Advertising. Everywhere you go is advertising the McChicken sandwich, or I'm picking on McDonald's, but pick your favorite version of this like delicious looking thing that's gonna, you can't get away from food advertising. Kids can't get away from sugary food advertising, sugared beverages, all this stuff. Like it's very difficult to avoid the messaging that this is something that you want. And so my point in all that is like, I couldn't agree with you more that people need a catalyst. And also, they need to put some wins on the board. For decades, we've been telling people, one, the fallacy of fat. So like, oh, low fat foods or whatever. It's like that was not true. Two, there's so much misinformation out there from every different angle about what is healthy and what is not healthy and what to eat and what you're optimizing for. Am I optimizing for low fat, or am I optimizing for low carb, or I'm optimizing for keto, or am I optimizing to lose weight, or for my heart, or for my kid? What am I optimizing for? I don't even know anymore. And three, eat right and exercise has been the mantra for decades, right? And it just doesn't work for some people. It's
not working for a lot of people. Yeah.
Like it's really hard to make. I remember when Marnie made the shift, like to basically just commit all in on whole foods. And like, she just went all in on it and stopped eating every other kind of thing that but not everybody can do that.
I wouldn't say I'm all in. Like, I definitely indulge various times. I'm human.
I think his point is, compared to the average
correct
American, you and I and many people out there in our community, I guess the one question I have as we dive into this is, what's the span of this? Like, is it a quick fix? Or, this is expensive for anyone that doesn't have insurance coverage, which, as you said before we started recording, is a very small percentage of the population. It's $1,000 a month on average, from what I hear. And how long are you going to be on it? And then what happens after?
And you're giving yourself a shot. Like, there's a lot of things about the actual process of doing it. And, there's people out there, I just want to throw this into Stephanie's question, that are just looking to lose 10 pounds quickly. And, then there's the person that's morbidly obese. So I could see where this would be beneficial to someone who's morbidly obese and who could have a lot of these chronic health conditions that you mentioned earlier. But the person that just is looking to lose 10 pounds because they want their exterior figure to look a little better and whatever, I've heard of a lot of downsides too. And I would love to get into that and even get into some of your personal experience with the drug.
Yeah. So philosophically, like, I do not believe this is a quick fix drug. So like, when you get on it, you're going to be on it for life. if you want to maintain the benefits of being on it. So if you want the benefits of being less hungry and eating less and losing weight and keeping the weight off, you're going to have to stay on the drug. There are various forms of these compounds. So liraglutide, which is coming off patent this year, which is the sort of V1 version of these GLP-1s. That was a multi-dose injection, so that will become generic shortly, and you'll start to see that proliferate sort of worldwide. Worldwide, you're going to see generic liraglutide coming on market as an injectable. There is an oral version of semaglutide, or maybe an oral version of liraglutide. I'm going to just look really quick. I have a box right here. No, semaglutide. Oral version of semaglutide called Rybelsus. I have a box right here. Rybelsus. And Rybelsus is a once a day pill. So there is an oral version of semaglutide, which is the V2, the version 2 of these class of drugs. And so there's Ozempic, there's Wegovy. Wegovy is the stronger version of Ozempic. And there's Rybelsus, which is the oral version, and it's a once a day pill. So just to say that version, and then compound pharmacies have now started to create these off label, if you will, and you can buy them at a compound pharmacy for, call it $250 a month. So the oral version and the injectable versions, you're right, run somewhere around $1,000 a month if you're going to pay cash for them. But compound pharmacies can manufacture these for you. For right around, $200 or $250 a month. And I think that number is going to come down, dramatically in the next year. The expensive stuff, Mounjaro and what's going to be the newer versions of these are still very expensive. And so you need insurance coverage. So to the point of, is it a quick fix? It's not a quick fix. So I take this drug, and I'll get into what my own personal story, for the absolute health benefits that it provides me. And I believe that any potential side effects that it may have, and I don't have any right now, really outweigh, or all the benefits really outweigh any potential side effects for me. The benefits are, I have perfect blood pressure. I have perfect blood sugar. I have perfect kidney counts. I'm healthier now, or as healthy as I was in high school.
And before you were taking Mounjaro, you did not have those results, correct?
Before I was taking Mounjaro, my blood pressure started to go up. I'm 57 years old. I started to see the sort of effect of a life of consuming some of this stuff, of the life of living, in modern society with all the chemicals and all the stuff that, I started to see that stuff. A little higher blood pressure, cholesterol. I take that. I was taking a much bigger dose of statin, and then insulin, for my blood sugar.
So
every single one of those drugs, I take half I take 90% less insulin, 90% less insulin than as a type 1 diabetic, which is me. I need insulin every single day to live. I need it. I take 90% less insulin than I used to take. Just for my daily activity. I take half or more of the statin. All of my drugs, every single one of the drugs that I need to be on, I'm taking 50% or more less than I used to. And just after having been on Mounjaro.
Can I ask what your goal is? Are people seeing that they're able to not be on any insulin? I mean, 90% is almost, you're almost there. But with some of these other drugs, are we seeing that elimination of needing these statins and other blood pressure medications?
So one, I think that's a risk that some people have. So some people may be taking the GLP-1s and then not paying attention to the other drugs that they're taking, and thus then seeing kind of in a way an overdose, if you will, on some of those other drugs. So that you definitely have to pay attention, because as you lose weight, the impact of these other drugs, on a smaller person,
right,
is greater. So you really do need to pay attention to all of the different variables that you're worrying about your health. And my goal is to stay healthy. My goal is to be, call it high school healthy, if you will, for the rest of my life. And I see it in the numbers. Like I wasn't trying to lose a couple pounds or whatever. I had been healthy. I was a marathoner, I totally, relatively healthy. And then as I got older, the stuff that affects people as you get older started to affect me. And now, like, it's remarkable how healthy I am.
So I'm curious more specifically, like, how do you feel about food? Are you still eating that salty, crap that you said you were craving earlier? Or are you eating a diet of foods that come from the earth and whole foods? And are you hungry? Are you satisfied? Can you go out and enjoy a delicious meal? I'm really, I've read a lot about it, and I've heard from, a lot of things that I've read and listened to that, like, food is just kind of like you're just putting it in your body because you have to, but the enjoyment's gone. And I'm curious what your personal experience is like with that.
I'd have to say one of my favorite things in life ever is to go out to eat. Like, I love going out to eat. That's one of my favorites. And I have not lost any of my zeal for loving to go out to eat at all. Like, so from my perspective, I love food. I love to eat food. I just eat a lot less of it. I just eat like I just eat a lot less food. I'm not, it's not, I don't work my day around like, oh, my 3 meals. I work my day around when I'm hungry, and then that's it. So I don't even think about it. I don't think about food other than like when I'm hungry. And
so you're tuning into your body, right? And listening to when you feel hungry and eating, which is what we would hope everybody's doing. Are you finding that you're able to nourish your body, meaning you're getting enough, of all the macronutrients that a person needs to be healthy?
So yes and no. So yes and no. And I'll say yes in that if I look at my labs will say perfect everything. Like, there's like nothing like, oh, I was actually consuming too much vitamin D for a while because I also take quite a lot of supplements. As both of you may remember, when I first was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I immediately sort of thought about carbohydrates and sugar as sort of a no-no. And so I went sort of on a low carb approach to eating. And that meant high fat, high protein for me. And so I still maintain a low carb, high fat, high protein diet. And so in that, I also take quite a few supplements to make sure that I'm consuming that, that I'm getting all the things that I'm supposed to get from all the places that I'm supposed to get it. So my labs look perfect. All of my levels are perfect. But when I eat, when you say, am I nourishing myself? I still do avoid white carbs as much as I can. So if you consider white carbs a nourishment thing, then I don't eat those.
I'm talking about more like vegetables,
I love
fruit,
vegetables.
quinoa.
I mean,
fruit.
Quinoa is not my favorite, but I do eat quinoa. Yeah.
But carbs that are more whole-based carbs, not processed carbs.
Correct.
So and maybe this is more of a question than, trying to put words in your mouth, but being on Mounjaro, it sounds like it's helped you or just put you further on the path of eating more whole foods. You're just eating less of them. So it wasn't as if you're like, you were not eating a highly processed food diet and now you're just eating less of the processed food. For you, it's just less of more of the high protein, high fat, but still eating vegetables.
Yes. Being on Mounjaro just means not wanting to eat as much food. I think if you're a person who wants to eat less cheeseburgers, you will eat less cheeseburgers. If you didn't want to eat vegetables in the first place, you're just going to still not want to eat vegetables in the first place. So being on a GLP-1 hasn't converted or hasn't affected my desire to eat more whole foods versus not whole foods. That hasn't been the case. In fact, I will argue, perhaps, and maybe controversial, it allows me to eat pretty much whatever I want, just less of it. So I could, if I wanted to, just eat a lot of, I don't know, pick fried chicken or something like that, which I do like, and probably not have the effects of that fried chicken impact me as negatively as they would if I wasn't on Mounjaro. So it probably allows for people to have more variety in what they want to eat because they're just not eating as much of those things. I still enjoy all of the things that I used to enjoy. I still enjoy all of the crappy stuff that I, used to still like. GLP-1s aren't transitioning me away from liking those things. A person still has to want to eat more whole foods or want to eat more vegetables on their own. And I think GLP-1s provide a sort of a catalyst again for you to consider making the behavior change choices that are required. As an example, GLP-1s have shown to help people lose weight. As you progress in that weight loss, you also potentially lose muscle mass, right? It's like, oh, all the fat's gone in my body now. I mean, I'm now as low a fat human as I can be. And now what is the Mounjaro or what is the GLP-1 going to fuel your body with? Well, you start to lose muscle mass. And so it's really important for a person who is on that journey or beyond the sort of fat loss part of the journey to maintain that muscle mass through exercise and working out. And so you do have to be cognizant of the fact that this GLP-1 is going to consistently fuel weight loss beyond the fat store that you have in your body and will start to consume muscle mass if you don't work on keeping your muscle mass.
Would you say your energy is depleted then? Like, so let's say you're a person that, loses 30 pounds or something, and it's depleting your muscle mass. And like, I feel like your fragility level, I guess, just goes up dramatically unless you are doing like very targeted strength training to keep that muscle mass and keep your body strong.
Yeah, but your body was already fragile before that if you weren't doing that strength training, right? I mean, so it's not as though if you're just a person who doesn't do any strength training as it is, you're just a person with a lot of extra fat on your body that isn't doing strength training. And now when you lose that fat and then you potentially lose some of that muscle, you're still a person who isn't doing strength training. So the choice, I guess what I'm saying is Mounjaro or GLP-1s are not a catch-all, become the healthiest human you've ever become drug thing, and then that just happens magically. It's a catalyst to help you reduce some of the impactors on metabolic conditions like the diabetes, heart disease, obesity, kidney disease, and some of the things. Helps you reduce the medications you're taking, helps all that. But you still have to eat right and exercise if you want to be a healthy human.
Right. So how do you think you can pair these two things that we just mentioned? So potentially being on a GLP-1 to reduce, to improve your metabolic health and lose weight and all the things we talked about. But like you said, it's not the panacea. And so what else can we be doing? And how do you think we can partner, we collectively as a society, so that those folks that are on the drugs are also getting some incorporating lifestyle changes, and maybe it's through coaching or other avenues, so that if they don't want to be on the drug or they can't afford to be on it, because some people, right, the cost is going to be an issue until the cost maybe goes down in years with the patents, et cetera. So maybe they use it as a 6-month or a year solution, but then when they come off of it, they're eating better and they are strength training and doing some other things.
Yeah.
From looking at healthcare, even just in the United States, and where we started the conversation with the cost.
Right now, there are no real meaningful catalysts to sort of kickstart any of that, right? So you've got to really want it. And then even if you really want it, and you're morbidly obese as an example, or you have heart conditions or multiple conditions, or you have type 2 diabetes and one other thing, or you're 40 pounds overweight or 30 pounds overweight. Think about it. Like, a lot of us are 30 pounds overweight. A lot of people. That's a lot of extra weight to be carrying around. And then it's also like how you feel about yourself, and do your jeans fit, and like, can you bend over without like your waist like pants waist, like, or irritating you, or what, all the things that happen. Or when you look in the mirror, you just don't feel as cute as you maybe used to or thought you did, And so like having a catalyst that helps you get that going, like, wow, I lost a couple pounds. Maybe I should start running.
Yeah.
And that would be the ideal, right? Like
like catalyst.
But like, I've read some articles about, teenagers that are obese going on these drugs. And it's like, to think about putting a teenager on a drug like this for the rest of their lives, to me is really sad. Like, that's a long time to be on a drug. And to be honest, like, we don't know what the outcomes of these drugs are long term. Like, nobody knows that right now. And I think, like, Stephanie, personally, I think she nailed it in that if you are going to use these drugs, you really do need to pair it with education for the person that's using it, so that, maybe their goal, diabetes aside, let's say we don't have diabetes.
Yep.
The goal is to get off these drugs and really learn, you lose 50 pounds and then you learn how to maintain that through diet and exercise.
I couldn't agree with that philosophy. That is if we're talking about weight loss, that to try to stem metabolic conditions before they happen, or I don't really want to opine on what a teenager should or shouldn't do without a condition like that. I'm not a doctor, but I'm
just saying a person who has their whole life ahead of them
should learn how to eat right and exercise as part of their daily health regimen. Absolutely.
And I get that this, from an emotional standpoint, there is Marnie and I just recorded an episode for Another Day, and we talked about emotional eating. So I get, like, people are not feeling good about themselves. And if this can help them feel good so that then they're motivated to go to the gym and they feel good, like, oh, I can actually get to the gym because I don't feel self-conscious about my body, and that helps them, then that's great, right? But then there needs to be like this emotional, like, almost, I don't know, coaching for lack of a better word, but an emotional component to it. I don't know, this topic is it's so multifaceted, and that's why we're doing this 3-part series. So,
and I also, I don't want to interrupt, but I do want to just touch on with you, Jeff, it's not just all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like, there are negatives to being on this drug. And I don't know if you've personally experienced anything, but, I've heard about stomach upset, diarrhea, nausea, loss of appetite, all of those kinds of things. Can you speak to any of that?
Sure. Yes. So a couple things. There's a clear warning on all of these class of drugs about thyroid conditions. So
right.
Thyroid cancer, when rats or mice were overdosed with GLP-1s, emerged in a small subset of rodent animals testing or whatever. I don't know exactly what the terminology is, but basically, so thyroid cancer, is an absolute possibility for people that are on these drugs, in the sense that they saw it in a small subset of mice. And then all the other elements that you talked about, where people's tolerability of slowing of gastric emptying, their ability to tolerate that, for some people is challenging. And then the effects of that are, whether it's constipation or diarrhea or just this feeling of fullness, are real. Now, I can tell you from my own personal experience that when I started liraglutide back 7 years ago, I decided it was weird. Like I started taking it and I started losing like a pound, every 3 days or every 2 days. I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? Let me just jack it up and start taking more, because I was like, my blood sugars are perfect, and now I'm dropping all this weight. So I did. I jacked up the dose and titrated that up myself. And I'm used to titrating my own drugs because I take insulin and I titrate my own insulin. And titrate means adjust. And I had the worst, my gastric emptying basically stopped. And so I was eating and I was feeling fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller. And I couldn't, and it was like a horrible, horrible, horrible constipation, like 3 days. And it was almost unbearable, like almost go to the hospital feeling. And so
Wow.
I realized, and then I drank a lot of water or whatever, but I realized that was me overdosing myself on this liraglutide. Victoza was the product. And anyway, like I dialed it down and then went slowly. And sort of I moved myself up slowly, because your body acclimates to the dose and then it stops working. So then you will give yourself a larger dose, and then your body acclimates to that dose, and then it stops working over a period of time. Semaglutide in particular. I have not experienced this with Mounjaro. The Mounjaro consistently sort of works. But I think what we haven't seen yet is how many people are on these for multiple years, and what is the effect of their body acclimating to higher and higher doses of these. I'm probably a good guinea pig in terms of like having been on it for now almost 7 or 8 years now. So
wow, I didn't realize I mean, I noticed a significant difference in your weight after not seeing you for maybe a year, but I didn't realize it's been that many years.
So you saw when you noted, Marty said something to me. She goes like, what's going on? Like, are you lost a lot of weight? That was when I started Mounjaro, the Lilly triple agonist, tirzepatide is the compound name, because the Victoza or liraglutide and then the semaglutide or the Ozempic and Rybelsus and Wegovy, that I plateaued on that for, I basically stepped up and then plateaued. And then when I started the Mounjaro, it was like, whoa, I lost, sort of it sort of the plateau went away. And that's when Marty said something to me, and I'll just say another side of it. I probably now have lost too much weight. I feel like my wife is telling me, my wife Jill is saying, you really should eat more.
Yeah.
Well, how do you manage
is there something
that?
with like microdosing? Like, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
can you just take a small amount of it and not this full dose maybe that you're taking, or?
So no. So with the Novo Nordisk products, there's the Wegovy and Ozempic, I think, are fixed dose. Victoza, the liraglutide, the first version of that was a multi-pen dose, so you could dose whatever you wanted. The Ozempic and Wegovy are fixed dose. You hit the pen once, and it injects that amount. Same thing with the Lilly product, Mounjaro. So you can't. However, what's interesting is that you start out on, as Mounjaro as an example, on a 2.5 milligram dose, and then as you then you go up to 5 milligrams, then you go to 7.5, then you go to 10, then you go to 12.5, then you go to 15. 15 is the highest dose. And same thing, and there's a new brand name for that called Zepbound. So there's Mounjaro and Zepbound are the same product. I plateaued I wanted to stay at the 10 milligram dose. And then there was this massive shortage, and there still is a massive shortage of these drugs in the market, because they don't have what's called fill capacity. They can manufacture the liquid, but they can't put it into enough pens fast enough to get it into the market. And so the doses, and they started to restrict the lower dosing, the 2.5 and 5 milligram starter doses of these products to stem demand. So you couldn't get it for the last, I'm going to say 6 months. There's still a demand problem. A supply problem. And so when I was on the 10s, I struggled to find it anywhere. I couldn't get it. And so my doctor said, hey, I can get you the 12.5s if you want to try that or whatever. So I tried the 12.5s, and anyway, 12.5 is too much for me. So as soon as the 10s become more available, I'll be dialing back my prescription to the 10s, which hopefully will be a good thing.
And you're not getting this at a compound pharmacy because you're getting it through your insurance and whatever. So
right. Now, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I'm actually not, hopefully nobody sees this that processes my insurance claims, but basically type 1 diabetes is not necessarily an approved use of these drugs. They're approved for type 2 diabetes, and they're approved for weight loss. And the reason why they're not approved for type 1 diabetes is because they're so damn effective at lowering your blood glucose. And so they're worried that people on with type 1 diabetes will, in essence, be overdosing on insulin because your blood sugar goes down so much, and then you take insulin with your blood sugar down even more. And overdosing on insulin is a very bad and expensive and horrible thing. Which is why that people in diabetes have all these devices to wear and all CGMs and all this stuff, because it's very expensive and very problematic if you overdose on insulin. So these drugs are not necessarily approved for people with type 1 diabetes. That said, I am on the drug, and it is covered by insurance.
Well, speaking of CGMs and type 2 diabetes, I know we're getting kind of towards the end of this conversation. We want to make sure that we ask you about your latest, CGM business project, CGM that you're working on. And we know it's coming out, and maybe you can talk about when it is and who is it for, and because there's a lot of CGMs out there.
So yes, so OneDrop, our company, has been working on the onehealth CGM system. It's a purpose-built product for people with type 2 diabetes. Not to say that it doesn't work for everybody, but it's purpose-built for the type 2 person who needs a CGM and is unable to get it covered by insurance. And so we're really excited. It's still under development. It still is not cleared yet by the FDA. But when it is, we're very excited to bring it to market, the onehealth CGM. And you can go to onedrop.today to take a look at a preview of it. It's a really cool new form factor. We manufacture it on silicon microneedle arrays. It's a microneedle-based CGM, senses a glucose in the interstitial fluid like all CGMs. It's a 24-hour wear. It's factory calibrated. It's a really cool product. And we're very excited to get it sort of through its final clinical efforts and through the FDA. There are 4 other CGMs in the market, 2 of consequence. The Dexcom and the Abbott products are really, really great products. And they're available to most people with type 1 diabetes like myself. About 55% of people with type 1 diabetes in the US have a CGM. But 95% of people with type 2 diabetes do not have a CGM. And it's largely due to cost. And so we've, at OneDrop, we're making the onehealth CGM to be ultra low cost for people with type 2 diabetes, so that both their insurance companies will cover it. And then if they want to pay cash, they can afford to do it. And so we're really excited about bringing next generation CGM to the market to meet the needs of all the people who could benefit from CGM, but today who can't afford it.
That's amazing, Jeff. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you're ever looking for people that don't have diabetes to test them, Stephanie and I would be happy to participate in some of that testing, as we've dabbled in CGMs over the past few years.
And I do find it fascinating. And even for those that don't have type 2 diabetes, but are maybe like borderline or pre-diabetic too, to help. Because I think part of it is just understanding your data and how what you're eating and how you're moving your body is impacting your blood sugar to hopefully get you so that you don't, end up in that type 2 diabetes state.
Yeah, what's interesting about that market is, people may benefit from, let's say, wearing a CGM all day for 1 day or all day for 2 days, but the CGMs out there, are dosed at 14 days or 10 days. You have to pay for and wear CGM for 10 days or 14 days. Our product is a 24-hour wear. So you wear it for 1 day or for 2 days. You still get the benefit of the class effects of CGM, but without the cost. And so that's
right.
That's
we
great.
were lucky enough to not have to pay for them and wear them for 14 days and really try and understand the data around, it's very individual. So, what makes Stephanie's blood sugar go up doesn't necessarily make my blood sugar go up. So I found it to be super informative, and just like even taking a walk after I eat or whatever it is to see what stabilizes blood sugar. Super interesting. And I didn't have a good understanding of that before I wore a CGM.
Interesting, and that's a great point. Everybody's different and everybody's response to different things are different. And I think, that like I said, most people could benefit from potentially being on a GLP-1. I think, most people could benefit from using a CGM a couple days a month or for 14 days straight, and then a couple days a month after that for the rest of their lives. I think, periodic CGM is something that can really inform how we make choices about our foods and our exercise, and helping people understand those two things as a catalyst beyond the GLP-1s that we talked about, I think would really benefit society in terms of helping people, get on that good food, that good exercise, and that behavior change that's required to help stem the sort of pandemic of metabolic conditions. So I think CGM are really the two main drivers of that.
Absolutely. So Jeff, as we wrap up this conversation, what would you say to our listeners or suggest to our listeners that are, thinking about maybe talking to their doctor or looking into the GLP-1 class drug? What would be like 1 or 2 or 3 things that you think a person should consider as they think about it?
Well, one thing to consider is, are you prepared to get on a journey that's a long-term journey that isn't sort of a quick fix thing? And if you're interested in a quick fix thing, like, I just don't think that this is really the thing for you, because you'll look at it as one of the things that helps you in the near term, and then you go right back to your old sort of way of being. And so, if you're ready to make a change, this could be a great catalyst for you. Think about talking to your doctor about it, and then ask yourself if you're ready for both the expense, to be on the journey, and then committing to the kind of health changes that are going to benefit you. And so if you're ready to make those a real change in your health, this could be a potential one lever of multiple levers in a catalyst to make that change for yourself. And I would strongly suggest talking to your doctor about it. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I am a strong advocate. I believe in the GLP-1 class. I believe that it is an important potential catalyst for us as a society to help stem the sort of metabolic pandemic that we're all facing today, and help catalyze people's behavior change into eating better, exercising, and feeling good about doing all the things that life has to offer and all the blessings that we have in life.
I think that's
where
very well
Stephanie
said.
and I come in, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can help you get on that journey from a food and a movement and holistic health perspective.
Yeah. And like you said, it's one leg of the stool, and maybe there's multiple legs. And I actually really like Marnie had always said, well, this is a quick fix. And your point was very well said, that it's not a quick fix, because 1, you do need to be prepared to be on it for a long time, potentially life. And 2, it's all about making those other lifestyle choices and habits, so that if and when you do go off of it, you can maintain the weight, and not even just the weight, but also the health benefits and your markers, like you shared, in addition to the weight loss. So I think that's great how you said this is a journey, and this is one piece of a puzzle, and it's a catalyst. So.
Yeah. And let me just say this in the public or whatever, Marnie, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of all of the cool stuff that you're doing. Really, honestly, it's really, really cool. You guys both,
you're embarrassing me. Thank you.
She's blushing now.
Very impressive. All of the things, including the book and the speaking and all of the programs that you're running, and the two of you really are doing such an amazing thing for people. And it really shows both your passion as well as your commitment to helping people stay healthy. So I couldn't just be prouder of all the work that you're doing. It's really cool.
Well, thank you so much. And same to you. But like, everything you're doing in your company is pretty amazing. And I'm excited for it to go into that next phase.
That next level. Let's go.
Well, it was great to talk with you again, Jeff. It's been a few years, and see you and hear all about your life, your health, what you've learned about GLP-1s, and this next phase for OneDrop. So, and
for opening our minds, because I have to say, personally, coming into this conversation, I had my own thoughts, and you definitely opened my mind. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for having me, and always happy to talk about it. Anybody wants to hit me up on the side, I'm Jeff at onedrop.today. You can find me. I'm pretty easy to find, and thank you both for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day.